So is Donald Trump ending up only embarrassing the Narendra Modi government with his repeated comments that he brokered the ceasefire and trade was an issue? Is Donald Trump at the end of the day more of a deal maker than a statesman? How serious should one take Trump's mediation bids in the first place? And how should the Modi government handle Donald Trump? Today, I'm happy to be joined by two top diplomats this country has had. Navtej Sarna, former Indian ambassador to the United States and Israel, among other top posts he's held. And TCA Raghavan is former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan, written extensively on the subcontinent. I appreciate both of you joining us. Let me come to you, Mr. Sarna, first, because you've served in the United States. Now you've got a president who time and again in every public forum in the last 72 hours claims he is the one who brokered the ceasefire and that he did it by offering a trade deal effectively to both sides. Something that India has rejected, but he keeps talking about it. How does one handle Donald Trump?
Well, thank you, Rajdeep. A pleasure to be here with you. I think those who have seen Trump 1.0 should not be too surprised. He said the same thing about mediation on Kashmir, standing next to Imran Khan in July 2019. And thereafter, after the abrogation of 370, etc., he never mentioned it again. Today, I think in Trump 2.0, hyperbole has become a habit with Mr. Trump. And I think India has made its position clear as much as it can without personally attacking him. I don't think we want to personally attack him, but our spokesman's position has been very clear on both the mediation aspects as well as the fact that trade was not talked about. All I want to say here is that, our position has to be clear. And we have to get a way of getting back Mr. Trump on track. And that, I'm sure, our diplomatic establishment can easily do. He has to be brought back to talking terror. And this is something which we have to handle. But it doesn't mean that we have succumbed to the so-called mediation on this issue, because even if you, for a moment, think of what if phone calls were exchanged, it means an end to hostilities. It does not mean pressure, and it does not mean mediation in the sense of, the way we have traditionally understood in our foreign policy establishment as mediation on issues. This is not, this happened in Kargil. When Pakistan, July 4th, Nawaz Sharif was called to the White House when nothing happens except barbecues in Washington, and he was told to back off. And so this is not really the issue. The issue is there is no mediation. As far as talks are concerned, I think the administration, the US administration, has sort of extended its, wishful thinking beyond a point of, a reality out there. So I think you have to let what Donald Trump has said, let it go over your left shoulder. It doesn't change a thing. And we have to get back to the multiplicity of actors in the US administration to get our message back on track.
You're saying you've got to get the message back on track, but TCA Raghavan, either way, every time Donald Trump says this, isn't it embarrassing that you've got a US president who, first of all, tweets the ceasefire, virtually taking credit for it, then refers to Kashmir as this 1,000-year conflict and offers to mediate? Are we to simply ignore, or as Navtej Sarna says, focus on getting the right message out there? Donald Trump isn't talking about terror. We are the victims, and he seems to be equating Pakistan and us in every statement he makes. How do you deal with him?
I think we have to focus on our priorities. In the course of the last few weeks, we have sent two very important messages to Pakistan. First, by keeping the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, and secondly, by the military and kinetic actions taken after the 7th of May. To my mind, both these very powerful messages registered, and thereafter, if the United States and others played a helpful role in diffusing tensions and stopping further escalation, it was a good thing. The United States has played, as Ambassador Sarna just said, a similar role in de-escalation in the past also. And it has also played a useful role in the past, as for instance, after the Mumbai terrorist attack, in channelizing intense diplomatic pressure on Pakistan. So we shouldn't, our position on third-party mediation on India-Pakistan issues is very clear. But we shouldn't make our principal position on that into such a big thing that we do not allow others to play a helpful role from our point of view otherwise. So I don't think...
No, but in the process, if I may just, if in the process of playing a helpful role, as you call it, isn't Donald Trump ending up equating India and Pakistan? He keeps saying two great nations that I'm dealing with, that he's spoken to both sides. You referred to Kargil, both of you referred to Kargil. Then Clinton sent out the tough message to Nawaz Sharif. Here the problem is he's trying to make it out to be as if both India and Pakistan were asked to pull back.
I think we should have confidence in our own abilities. Symmetries, power symmetries in the subcontinent have changed a lot since Kargil times. We don't need the United States to send Pakistan tough messages now. We are quite capable of doing it ourselves. The point is that the United States has played in the past, and it did so this time too, a useful role in de-escalating a potentially escalatory situation, and that is a good thing. I don't think we should necessarily see that as the thin end of the wedge in leading to a major mediation effort, because on third-party involvement in India-Pakistan issues, our position is very, very clear. So I don't see any scope for that position either changing because of some statements which have been made, or because there was a role played in de-escalating a crisis situation. Somehow that has weakened our position with regard to third-party players. I don't see the two as connected.
But should we get Donald Trump to send a firmer message, Mr. Raghavan, on terror specifically to Pakistan? Why are his statements not mentioning or referring to the terror emanating out of Pakistan?
I'm sure. I think the United States position on Pakistan is well known. It doesn't have to be reiterated on every occasion. And the history of Pakistan-US relations over the past 10 or 15 years really speaks for itself. So I don't think we have to ask them to wave a flag in our favor every time something happens. I think we need to have much more confidence in our own positions and our own capacities.
You know, Navteej Sarna, I just want to put up this, that Trump today is, of course, in the Arab world. He's got Saudi Arabia to make a commitment to invest $600 billion over 4 years in US to sell arms worth $142 billion. He's gone to Qatar and has got Doha to gift him a 400 million Boeing 747 Jumbo, and that there's he's also got, the plane is to be transferred to his foundation. 200 billion jet deal with Doha, a branded golf course and real estate project to come up in Qatar. He's now going to UAE, and we are told there'll be a 1.4 billion weapons sale to UAE, and UAE to invest 1.4 trillion over 10 years in the US. And on Syria, he's lifting sanctions on Syria and praising the Syrian president Ahmad al-Shara as young, attractive, tough guy who only till recently was designated a global terrorist by the US in 2013. We seem to be now dealing with a US president, if I may say so, who's a real estate deal maker and not a real serious statesman of any kind.
Well, Rajdeep, what's so surprising about that? I think there are two aspects to Mr. Trump's personality. One is the real estate developer, and the second is the reality show host. So when you combine those two, you get what you're seeing. So I must just come back to a couple of points that Raghavan made. I think one is the mediation aspect, which we have already talked about. And the second thing you mentioned was the hyphenation aspect. I think the hyphenation aspect should not also be taken as seriously because it is momentary and it is superficial. Because the world has to be told again the real India story. We are not in the same league as Pakistan. We are in a different league. And we have to tell countries like Turkey this, that if you want to do business with us, then you have to behave differently. Therefore, this hyphenation comes by because the world is overworked. The world is crowded with crises. So the minute it's a lazy assumption that here are two nuclear armed guys going at each other, they will spiral out of control. But this hyphenation has been broken before. It will be broken again. So I don't worry too much about that. As far as Mr. Trump's personality and his penchant for deals is concerned, yes, he is a deal maker and a peacemaker. Even the State Department spokesman is actually using the two words interchangeably in a couple of statements at the back. And by the way, on the mediation aspect, the State Department seems to be walking away from it already. The statement yesterday says, commend their decision and rejects, which reflects strength, wisdom, and fortitude. And we urge both sides to maintain direct contacts. Now, this is a walking away from the previous position. So, I think what we need is sustained diplomatic effort. We don't really need to get onto the rooftop and start shouting against Mr. Trump. And nothing that Mr. Trump says is cast in stone. It's what gets him in the morning that makes things move.
So therefore, Mr. Raghavan, if we have the Pakistanis claiming, forget about the military part of it, that I think is very clear that they've suffered heavy losses. That's increasingly becoming clear. But diplomatically, can the Pakistanis use this ceasefire to try and claim that, they want a dialogue with India? Here is Donald Trump talking of dinner between Modi and Sharif. Was that simply a carrot offered to the Pakistanis to get them to sign on to the ceasefire?
I think the Pakistanis found that the ceasefire was in their interest, and they would also see President Trump's tweets to some extent as giving them a little extra satisfaction. But I won't pay too much attention to that, because in the end, Pakistan also has to sell this ceasefire to its people, and therefore their claiming victory is something which is inevitable and natural. We don't have to take it at face value. The important thing, to my mind at least, is despite the sharp erosion in Pakistan-US relations in the past decade and a half, how significant a role the United States still played vis-a-vis Pakistan. That is something quite surprising, because one would have expected that with the major erosion in Pak-US relations, such a role would be more difficult for the US to play. But in fact, Pakistan accepted that role very readily, and in fact with great eagerness. I think that is a significant development, and we shouldn't underestimate it.
Okay, let me give Navtej Mr. Sarna, a final word. Mr. Sarna, therefore, do you believe that India now needs to aggressively go and make a pitch across the world to explain to the world that we are the victims, Pakistan the perpetrator? Do we need to do a bit more in that regard, in your view, or not?
I don't think we need to do anything in a sense of panic or desperation. I mean, this is part of noble diplomatic work. But clearly, what we have to do is to make sure that the message stays on terror and terror alone, and doesn't get diluted into other things. And that is just a nuancing of our messaging, which has already been there. But we are working across the board, whether it is FATF, whether it is other institutions, whether it is the UN Security Council. I think the message has to go back. Listen, this was not a conflict between two nuclear armed countries just because we don't like each other. This was a retaliation to a terror attack from a country which supports the institution of terror as an instrument of state power. And that is a message which has been consistent, and I think it should continue. But if there have been particular incidents, which particular countries with whom we need to rub this message in again, then we should do so.
Okay. Navtej Sarna and Mr. Raghavan, I appreciate two very fine voices joining me and giving us a sense and putting Trump's comments in some kind of context. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining me.